The story at the center of Kelly's Heroes was real. The theft of Nazi gold by American military personnel actually happened, was covered up by the United States government, and appeared in the Guinness Book of World Records for 44 years. The film your audience thought was fiction was built on something that genuinely occurred. And by the end of this video, you will understand why that changes everything about how you watch it. Think about the first time you watched Kelly's Heroes. Not the war film you expected, something different. Men who decided that gold was a more honest reason to risk their lives than any order they had been given. Eastwood with that quiet authority, Telly Savalas with his cigarette, Don Rickles running a black market from a foxhole, and Donald Sutherland in a tank, listening to music, talking about positive waves, like someone who had wandered in from a completely different decade. It was made in 1970. The Vietnam War was at its peak. Every person in that theater understood exactly what they were watching, and the story behind it is as wild as anything on screen. If these are the films that shaped your understanding of war, courage, and the absurdity of authority, this channel was built for you. Subscribe before we start. We are starting at number 10, and I want you to hear this carefully. The robbery in this film was not invented, it happened. Real American soldiers, real Nazi gold, covered up for decades. When you understand that number 10 is a true story, every scene that follows it lands differently. Number 10, the robbery was real, the U.S. government covered it up for decades. The screenplay was written by Troy Kennedy Martin, who based it on a real event listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the greatest robbery on record. In 1945, as the war in Europe was ending, American military personnel and German civilians participated in the theft of the German national gold reserves in Bavaria. The estimated value was $2.5 billion. The United States government subsequently covered it up. The theft remained in the Guinness records from 1956 to 2000, 44 years, before being removed. MGM's head of research actually wrote to the Guinness Book in 1968, requesting specific information on the entry before production began. The studio wanted to know exactly how real the real version was. The answer was real enough that the film's premise, soldiers going AWOL to steal gold, was not satire. It was history with different names attached. Every laugh the audience got from Kelly's plan was built on something that had actually happened. And the American government had spent 20 years hoping nobody would notice. And Clint Eastwood almost wasn't there to tell the story. Number 9, Eastwood took the role for one reason. That reason left. He was stuck. Clint Eastwood signed on to Kelly's Heroes because his close friend Don Siegel was set to direct it. That was the only reason. He trusted Siegel, they had worked together before, and the combination of Eastwood's presence and Siegel's direction was the film Eastwood had agreed to make. Then Siegel ran into post-production complications, finishing Two Mules for Sister Sarah, and had to withdraw from Kelly's Heroes entirely. Brian G. Hutton replaced him. Eastwood was already under contract and had no legal basis to follow Siegel out the door. He stayed. He made the film, and he spent the rest of production nursing a frustration with MGM's eventual editing decisions that he never fully resolved. The actor who gave Kelly his quiet, contained authority, the specific quality of a man who has made a decision and will not be argued out of it, was himself a man who had made a commitment he hadn't fully chosen and was honoring it anyway. And Yugoslavia was chosen for a reason that said everything about how seriously this film took its subject. Number 8, they filmed in Yugoslavia because it was the only country with real WTO equipment still running. One of the primary reasons Yugoslavia was selected as the main filming location was that in 1969, it was one of the very few nations whose army still operated genuine World War II mechanized equipment, both German and American, including fully functioning M4 Sherman tanks, no props, no replicas, real vehicles from the actual conflict, maintained and operational, available for a film production. This simplified the logistics enormously and gave the film a physical authenticity that no studio backlot could have replicated. When you watch Kelly's tanks roll across that landscape, when you see the specific weight and movement of real wartime machinery, you are watching the actual equipment that fought in the actual war. Yugoslavia in 1969 was, in that specific sense, the closest thing to 1944 France that a film crew could access. The country no longer exists. The equipment is gone. What the cameras captured was the last operational moment of an entire generation of military technology. And on the first day of filming, something happened that almost ended everything before it began. Number 7, Sutherland arrived, got sick on day 1. His wife was told he would likely be dead before she could get there. Donald Sutherland traveled to Yugoslavia for the first day of filming. That night he became ill. Within hours the diagnosis was clear: spinal meningitis. The hospital treating him did not have the antibiotics needed to fight the infection. He went into a coma. A telegram was sent to his wife in Los Angeles. It told her to travel to Yugoslavia immediately. It also told her that her husband would likely be dead before she arrived. Sutherland recalled the experience in his own words: "I had spinal meningitis. They didn't have the antibiotics, so I went into a coma, and they tell me that for a few seconds I died. I saw the blue tunnel, and I started going down it. I saw the white light. I dug my feet in." He survived. He returned to set 6 weeks later and completed the role that became one of the most beloved performances of his career. The man who almost died in a Yugoslav hospital, who saw the white light and dug his feet in, came back and played Oddball, who talked about positive waves, which, under the circumstances, was either deeply ironic or deeply appropriate. And while Sutherland was in a coma, news arrived from Los Angeles that was somehow even harder to process. What happened next, involving Sutherland's wife, the FBI, and a personal check, is one of the great stories in Hollywood history. Stay with us through Facts 6 and 5. And number 1 is about Sutherland himself, what he survived and what he left behind. Keep going. Number 6. Sutherland's wife was arrested by the FBI for buying hand grenades with a personal check. While Donald Sutherland lay in a Yugoslav hospital recovering from spinal meningitis, his wife Shirley Douglas was in Los Angeles being arrested by the FBI. She had attempted to purchase hand grenades for the Black Panther Party from an undercover federal agent. She had written a personal check. Clint Eastwood received this information and had to deliver it to Sutherland. He walked Sutherland up a hillside overlooking the Yugoslav countryside and told him the full story. By all accounts, the retelling went normally until Eastwood got to the part about the personal check. At that point, Eastwood laughed so hard he fell to his knees. Sutherland, who had just recovered from a near-fatal illness and was now learning his wife had been arrested for illegal arms procurement, had to physically help his co-star off the ground. Eastwood then put his arm around him and walked him back down the hill. Some stories cannot be invented. This is one of them. And underneath all of this chaos, the film was carrying a message that its 1970 audience understood immediately. Number 5. Every audience member knew this was about Vietnam. Nobody said it out loud. Kelly's Heroes was released in June 1970. The Vietnam War was at its most divisive. American men were dying in a conflict whose purpose was being questioned in every home, every diner, every barbershop in the country. And into that moment came a film about soldiers who decided to go AWOL, not to protest the war, not to make a political statement, but to steal gold for themselves. Because the gold was real and the war's stated purpose was not. Oddball, the hippie tank commander who listens to music during battle and refuses to engage with negative waves, was Vietnam-era counterculture dropped directly into 1944. Nobody missed it. The general who spends the film mistaking Kelly's private operation for a heroic advance, celebrating victories he doesn't understand, taking credit for a mission he didn't order, was the Pentagon in a different uniform. The audience knew. The studio knew the audience knew. The film never said Vietnam once. It didn't have to. 2 facts left. Number 2 will surprise you, and number 1 will stay with you. Number 4, the theme song became a hit in Germany. The man who wrote it became Lieutenant Governor of California. Burning Bridges, the song that opens and closes Kelly's Heroes, was written by Mike Curb and became a genuine hit record in Germany and Austria following the film's release. It charted. It was played on radio. A war comedy's theme song found its biggest audience in the country that had been the villain of the film it scored. Mike Curb, the lyricist, went on to serve as Lieutenant Governor of California from 1978 to 1982. He remains the last Republican to have held that office in the state. The most successful political career ever launched from a war film theme song. Curb has spoken about both achievements with equal pride. Whether scoring Kelly's Heroes or governing California required more stamina is a question he has been asked and has declined to definitively answer. Number 3. Oddball was Sutherland's own creation, almost entirely improvised and perfect. The character of Oddball, the hippie tank commander who refuses negative waves, listens to music during combat, and operates by a philosophy that has no military equivalent, was substantially created by Donald Sutherland himself. The script gave him a framework. What Sutherland built inside that framework was his own invention, drawn from the countercultures surrounding him, from his own instincts, from his specific understanding of what the film was actually about underneath the genre. Sutherland's Oddball is the film's philosophical center. He is the character who articulates, without ever quite stating it directly, the film's fundamental argument that the world operates better on positive waves than negative ones, and that most of the structures around us are built from the wrong material. It is a surprisingly radical position to hold in a Sherman tank. Sutherland made it feel entirely natural, and he did it mostly without a script. Number 2, Eastwood was furious with the final cut. He said it was not the film he made. When MGM delivered the final edited version of Kelly's Heroes, Clint Eastwood was deeply unhappy. He felt the studio had removed scenes of significant character development, sequences that gave the soldiers depth, history, and specificity that the heist plot alone could not provide. He had no final cut approval. The studio made its decisions. The film was released. Eastwood said publicly that what reached theaters was not the film he had made. He has maintained that position. The version audiences have watched for 55 years, the one that has become a beloved classic of the war comedy genre, is Eastwood's film minus the elements he considered essential. The complete version he intended has never been publicly released. Somewhere in an MGM archive is a longer, deeper Kelly's Heroes that the studio decided was too much for a summer audience. Whether they were right is a question Eastwood stopped answering. Number 1, he dug his feet in, he came back for 55 more years. Donald Sutherland died on June 20th, 2024. He was 88 years old. He had gone down the Blue Tunnel in Yugoslavia in 1969 and dug his feet in and come back. He had survived spinal meningitis without antibiotics in a communist country while his wife was being arrested in Los Angeles for purchasing grenades with a personal check. He had improvised Oddball from nothing but instinct and conviction. He had outlived most of the cast of a film that almost killed him before it started. Clint Eastwood, 94 years old as of this recording, is the last major survivor of Kelly's Heroes. The film they made together in Yugoslavia in 1969 is still being watched, still making people laugh, still being understood by anyone paying attention as a film about something considerably larger than a gold heist. Sutherland talked about positive waves for the rest of his career. He returned to the idea often, in interviews, in the way he approached his work, in how he spoke about a profession he loved completely. A philosophy he had invented for a fictional tank commander in 1969 became something he actually believed. He saw the white light. He dug his feet in. He came back and gave 55 more years of work to an audience that never quite gave him enough credit for any of it. That is Kelly's Heroes, a war film about something other than war, made by people who are barely surviving the making of it, and still here, still playing, still carrying positive waves. Tell us in the comments, when did you first watch Kelly's Heroes? And is there a line from it, a scene, a moment, that has stayed with you since? Write it down. We want to know. Subscribe and hit the bell. We will see you in the next one.